All right, Chance, let's get right to it. The Reds hadn't won a series since last month, but also hadn't beaten a team the way that they beat the Arizona Diamondbacks all season. You know, those rally Reds that had been missing in action, they showed up on Saturday for the first time. First walk-off win of the season. After 5 extra inning losses, they finally scored and finally won in extra innings as well. And a team that hasn't had a lot of big, impactful home runs this season, they did that too. Of the 21 runs scored in 3 games against Arizona, 14 of the 21 runs were the result of home runs. So, Chaz, between the rain delays and the game that took 2 days to finish, what did you keenly observe about the Reds in this series from your vantage point in the press box at Great American Ballpark?
The Reds really did have to grind for some games this weekend, and the story of the season kind of has been is when they've had to grind, they've lost the games. It's been all or nothing. These games that they've won have been decided early, or they find ways to lose late. What was different in Friday's game was kind of that Lodolo pitching through the pouring rain and then them finding that game-tying homer and then coming through in extra innings. How many times have we seen them have a big win and then fall off dramatically? Well, this time the Reds kind of ran through that line with the big first inning in Game 2 of the Diamondback series. And Game 3 was another one. Zach Allen was rolling. Brady Singer wasn't in a rhythm. The Reds were it kind of felt like one of those days for the Reds again. But then some big homers were the difference. And kind of what I learned was the message in the clubhouse, something that they spoke about was be on the top step, kind of carry that different type of energy that the Reds have been missing this season. And I'm an analytical person. I don't think that's how you change an offense. But when you literally don't have any late comeback wins all season, you know what? I am putting some real stock into kind of the energy and the tone that the Reds tried to set. I usually never do this, but I put some real stock into kind of that emphasis and that, attention to intangibles. I really do believe that made a difference this weekend.
So someone that admittedly removes emotion from the equation is acknowledging emotion being a positive for this Red squad. Are we there?
I'm not a robot. I pick my spots for that kind of thing, and I think that the emotion side certainly factored into it here.
I think we're breaking new ground here. I think all of a sudden we have a show because Chaz is into his feels and into emotion.
It's
all said and done. When it's all said and done, the Reds are back to 500. The lineup got healthier, maybe about to get even healthier than they are right now. Concerns? You always got concerns. The headliner this week is the return of Hunter Green to the injured list and the possibility that exists that this might be a lengthier absence for him than the 2 starts he missed last time. That's just kind of the news of the weekend. But also, we've started this show with Charlie Goldsmith in his feels. He even smiled for the YouTube audience. Welcome to Power Stacks, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. Coming up on the show this week, immediate impact. That's what Christian Encarnacion-Strand was, but can he, Chaz, have a lasting impact? And what's the trickle-down effect on the Reds lineup? We get into that. Also, what's the plan? And more importantly, if you have a plan, will it work? Deep into Charlie's notebook on the top-to-bottom hitting philosophy in the Reds organization. And free ice cream. Who doesn't love free ice cream? Who gets it and how you can get it too. All that's on the way. But first, the leadoff spot. And first, Chaz, a refresher on the man with the 26 letters in his name. Speaking from experience, it's best to shorten things like that. And we've shortened Christian Encarnacion-Strand just to CES. Some people like to say CES. I prefer CES.
I don't like CES.
But I don't like it.
Yeah,
but even
I don't like it either. Mm-hmm. But I don't like CES, but keep going.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right. Okay, that's okay. Starting with him, because
why do people call Matt McLain Mac? That's another nickname to me in the clubhouse that makes no sense. Matt is right there.
I call him Matty. When I see him, I say, "What's up, man?"
Sure.
Okay, that's good. But you don't like Mac.
It's the same syllableness. Big fan of SB. I would say SB probably has the best.
SB works.
Tease,
Yeah.
TJ Friedel gets called Tease.
Just
That
Teej.
works well.
And
Beeman for Will Benson, I like that one as well.
Right.
But Mac
Right.
and Stess, I've just never been a big fan of.
I'm okay with Mac, even though I don't say it. I think we all agree, as does producer Kent, that Cess is not good. He says it sounds like Cespedes, which that's fair. Also, the pitchers refer to DJ as Deej. All that works. So that could be a whole segment. But since we're starting with CES, let's start with the return of CES. And can anybody do more in their first 3 games back than what he did in this series against the Diamondbacks? 7 hits, 3 home runs, a bunch of big, impactful runs driven in at a time when the Reds really needed it. But just, a refresher course since he's been out for a while. Part of the Tyler Mahle trade with Spencer Steer in 22. Now, here's what shocked me a little bit on Sunday when we started to look at some of this on the pregame show. He's 25 years old still, but because he made his debut for the Reds in 2023, and here we are in June of 2025, I was surprised that he's barely played 100 big league games. The story on him's been health. He's missed a lot of time, but just to see and add up the number of games, he's at 110 big league games right now, and that's not much. So the obvious question where we start this conversation is, can this impact be lasting? He has to have good health. He has to have consistency. Do you believe he's positioned to find either of those things this time around?
I'm going to plant my flag with this take. Christian, you'll be able to tell the direction he's trending just based on how he's moving. I actually feel very similarly about Noelvi Marte when he's out there.
Yeah.
Just the way that each of them look athletically, how they carry themselves, and how that translates even into their quick twitch movements. I think that tells you everything you need to know whether or not you're going to get the good version of the guy or the bad version of the guy. Because we have seen bad CES as well. What's so fascinating about Christian too is he is the hardest guy to figure out, because he will always destroy AAA pitching and destroy spring training pitching. And it's the big league stuff that's going to be the rest of what Christian Encarnacion-Strand is able to be at the big league level. So he's a big I don't know in what in terms of what his role is for their long-term plans. Now, for their short-term plans, here's what was even more interesting to me than how much you rake the fact that he was playing third base. Because you can have him at third base, that helps you have a stronger defensive first baseman in Spencer Steer. That helps you get some of your 9 best hitters in the lineup against right-handed pitching. Now having Santiago Espinal on the bench, CES playing third was a good sign of how they feel Christian is at athletically coming back from injury. This is a back thing that he's dealt with for 3 years, on and off, obviously not always on, but it has popped up. So they showed some faith in him there. The defense has been something I've looked in a lot on. Here's Freddie Benavides. I asked him how he feels about Christian Encarnacion-Strand at third base. Play third base over the last couple of years. How have you seen him develop there?
Well, he worked really hard at spring training. I mean, he played some games there. He worked out almost every day there on a daily basis. So it was good to see. I mean, he's using his feet and he's very accurate with his arms. So that's already a plus. So I mean, it's just another thing that he could go back to, and it helps us. His versatility helps us, with the lineups where he could place it first and third base.
Third base is, it's funny. I didn't even plan to mention Marte, but I did, and he's a part of this too. But he's now a long ways off due to injury. Third base has kind of been that spot that the Reds have struggled figuring out. I think it was going to be Gavin Lux as their everyday third baseman heading into the season. And I think Gavin's played 3 games there all year. Like, it's been a tricky spot. Being able to put Christian at third, 1, lengthens out the lineup, 2, shows good signs about how they feel about where he's at athletically and from a health perspective. And again, that's really what I'm going to be tracking with CES.
Of the 110 games he played, we should also note how many of those did he play injured? Going back to last season when he had the wrist and the hand and all that. So you can even factor in that just in his, I hate sample size, but relative inexperience at the big league level. But what can he do if he's healthy and in on a regular basis? And when you bring up third base, one of the plays that stands out from Sunday, maybe the best play defensively of the game was the foul ball. Him diving to his right late in the game into foul territory to make that stop. It's foul. But when you talk about how he moves, that was the best example of what a healthy Christian Encarnacion-Strand can do at that size. Because listen, this is a big man. He is a large man, but I think you can see some of the athleticism if he can stay healthy. And that applies for every single player on the roster. But because of his recent history of in and out and long extended absences from the team because of the injuries that he's dealt with, that's the biggest question where it's always going to start with him. I would love to see a long, healthy run of Encarnacion-Strand in the lineup every day to see what happens. And the next question is, you brought this up. What about the lineup? What about the trickle down to the lineup and what we saw in this series with him in and the pieces that were able to be moved by Terry Francona?
I mentioned on the last show that I actually liked having Lux in the 2 spot, even though that stacks lefties up top, because it is a Reds team that either starts strong or hasn't done much this year. But there have been 2 significant structural lineup changes. One is Lux in the 2 spot, and next is CES batting cleanup. And we've talked all season about how the Reds are a different team when Austin Hayes has been in the lineup. And I'm sure we'll have that conversation again when Hayes gets activated soon, and I'm sure he'll start raking. CES isn't Hayes, but that right-handed catalyst and slugger is what Hayes was giving them, and CES was able to do a part of that over the weekend. So, let's see how it looks with 2 guys who can contribute that type of real pop from the right side, because like Stevenson's been fine, but he hasn't become a power hitter like maybe he showed some signs of at the start of his career. Spencer Steer hasn't been a power hitter this year. I think his year's been okay. Definitely below expectations, better since he started playing the field, but the power hasn't been a part of his game as much as it's needed to be this season. Matt McClain, he actually does rank second on the team in homers. He kind of has hit the ball hard and squared it up, but not all of them have dropped or have landed, but certainly the the slug and the OPS aren't where you want them to be either. So having Hayes back soon, and then if Christian can also give the Reds that is how you lengthen out a lineup.
Let me throw one more name at you, and I'm not trying to drag this out, but as we talk about, Austin Hayes potentially, hopefully being close. Jeimer Candelario's playing at AAA right now. When he's ready or healthy, or when does that decision get made, or where might this fit in the Reds' plan as it stands right now if everybody's healthy?
I'll start here. Can he play third base? That's he had gone away from playing third base before he went on the IL. They're going to give him as much time probably as they can, or at least an extended amount of time, unless there's like a crazy run of injuries and they just need help, because he was in such a poor spot. He's the most feel-oriented hitter I've ever seen, and his feel has been off for 2 years. So he needs this chance to reset. Now, from a tangible roster perspective, I see him competing with Connor Joe for playing time, or for really what it would be is a spot. Joe obviously has outproduced Jeimer to this point, but Joe's not a guy Joe's not a game changer. Joe hasn't been a league average hitter for most of his careers. So can Jeimer find and show that he's ready to fill that role? That's the decision they're going to have to make there. And then can he play third base too? Because if he's just a first baseman, that limits your versatility and flexibility. So it is a very notable rehab assignment that I'll be following with Jeimer Candelario.
All right, moving on now to Charlie's notebook, and we kind of pick up on that same conversation because the notebook is about hitting. Now, in baseball, you try to keep it simple, right? See ball, hit ball. You want to make hard contact. Put the ball in play, hit it hard somewhere. That's all the simple version. But you bring the word philosophy into the conversation, and that implies something deeper. The Reds and a lot of organizations talk about a philosophy that they'd like to have within their organization, top to bottom. Is there a hitting philosophy for this edition of the Cincinnati Reds, and what is it?
This is something I've been working on since spring training. The Reds need more. We all know the Reds need more. The Reds unlike other teams, haven't been aggressive in free agency and in the trade market to add dynamic threats to the top of their roster. They've been open and honest. This is a draft and develop or acquire and develop model that the Reds are building for. And, for every next run the Reds need to score, it's one they'll need to find from development and from the plan and from the philosophy. And the Reds haven't won a playoff game since 2012. They haven't won a playoff series since 95. They need to be better. They recognize they need to be better. What I think hasn't been discussed enough and kind of what led me down this rabbit hole is I always get asked, like, when are the Reds going to change? When are the Reds going to change? They need to change. Putting the payroll and the roster building stuff aside, because that's its own bucket. That's an ownership bucket. Something they tangibly can control on the day-to-day is what their hitting philosophy is going to be. And they've made some real significant changes behind the scenes since really over the last 2 years, especially changes, names that we hear from now and then, but we don't hear regularly. Like they promoted Brad Meador from, he had been running the draft for a while. He had been a scout. He had worked his way up to assistant GM. They made him the general manager. He's now part of every decision. They bring in Francona. Jeremy Farrell, a really interesting guy in the organization, came from the Cubs where he was their director of player development. He's now been there. He's been with the Reds for 4 years. He's been their head farm director for the last 2. They bring in Chris Valleca as their hitting director. He has organizational responsibilities on the hitting side, just like Derek Johnson does on the pitching side. And the big change this year is they're now modeling how they structure hitting the same way they model how they structure pitching. And it's kind of been a white whale for the Reds. I don't have the numbers in front of me. They've had like 5 hitting coordinators and 3 hitting directors and 1 offensive coordinator and 4 hitting coaches and 7 assistant hitting coaches over the last, I believe, 6 years. And there has not been alignment. That's the word. There has not been alignment. But then when you look at the group the Reds have now, and again, this is kind of what I've been working on. Well, of course, you got Terry Francona. Well, Jeremy Farrell has known Terry Francona for 20 years. Jeremy Farrell then went to the Cubs, where the guy who ran that organization, his boss was Theo Epstein, who was a part of that Boston tree. Chris Valleca worked with Francona. Oh, by the way, Chris Valleca was one of Jeremy Farrell's right-hand guys in the farm system in Chicago with the Cubs organization under Epstein. So there's been a lot brewing behind the scenes to create the alignment the Reds have been missing. They're using the word holistic. Like they had gone much more all in on analytics. This is talking about the art of hitting, the situational hitting, as opposed to a lot of swing mechanics and data-driven decision-making that the Reds have been making, where there's a place for and which still exists, but they're bringing in some different philosophies and perspectives, as you've seen with this realignment. So it's a very long answer. Let's hear from GM Brad Meador about what the Reds have done and what they've changed on the hitting side.
Anytime you make change, it takes time, especially when you make blasé changes and organizational. I feel a lot of people involved, and that's not something that happens overnight, as he's seen it. So I do think there's been positive changes, but I also think we have a ways to go.
How much has alignment kind of been the thing that you guys have been looking for?
It starts with alignment. Like if you want to get this right as an organization, it starts with alignment. That's not something that we just started this year. That's something we've been focused on for years now. Now. When you change a philosophy or change a direction, then it's almost a start over, and that makes it harder. But it starts with a line. We have to be aligned from bottom to top to get this right. Sometimes you have to make changes to make sure you're hitting the balance or getting to where you think you're going.
How much of what you do is, I mean, you run the draft, obviously, player acquisition, player evaluation, having that in a GM role. Has that been a part of the idea too, to kind of have that type of skill sets? Obviously, Nick comes from the pro scouting side as well, but do you feel like that's useful and helpful in all of this? Because you're one of the big changes.
I sure hope so. I mean, I think that was part of when Nick first talked to me about this role. I was in the as the assistant GM, I oversaw acquisition and development, and so that's continued in this role. And I certainly hope that my background and experience has helped that. It's what I love the most is, scouting and development. And so, I hope it helps. So I hope it helps Jeremy, and I hope it helps Jeff and Joe and, all the guys.
Last thing for an organization that is draft and develop, how much does it mean to get kind of that extra 5-10% out of the guys you're bringing up? That's kind of the name of the game, eh?
Say it again, sorry.
As a draft and develop organization, or acquire and develop, how important is it to keep getting that extra 5-10% out of the hitters you're trying to coach up?
Well, it's trying to get the most out of everyone. Especially when you look at the draft, it goes well beyond hitting on the first rounder. Where we are, where we will always see is we have to be a good drafting team, and we have to be a good developing team. And so the more players you get right in acquisition, the easier it makes on development, and the deeper your organization is, and the better your major league team.
So that's a lot about what's kind of been brewing behind the scenes. I want to talk to you a bit more about what the philosophy is and kind of the true things they're stressing. But kind of, Brian, what stands out to you about all that?
You always hear from different teams and different organizations, we have a plan, we have this. Whether it pertains to hitting, pitching, or other things. You always heard in St. Louis during their extended run that there was the Cardinal way. I think the Reds have needed a way for a while. I think every team chases that. You'd like to have the way, but it has to make sense. It has to pay dividends, and it has to align, as you say. And I think that's the direction that at least everybody's trying to get there. I know you asked Terry Francona a little bit about this, and what stood out to me was, he stressed that the philosophy is not cookie cutter to a player, but it's the consistency of the message. Is that fair in what they're trying to accomplish here?
It goes all the way from player acquisition through, what they're telling Matt McClain right now. So, here's the philosophy. Like Nick Kroll quote, he said, as an offensive profile, you want guys that are going to make contact, especially in our ballpark. It makes sense for guys. It makes sense for us because if you can hit line drives and use the whole field in this park, you're going to be able to score runs. Kroll went on. He kept stressing, talking about approach, and then he talked about acquiring guys who were hit over power, like McClain, Cam Collier, Sal Stewart. So then, as you tell these guys what to do in A ball, you're on that, as opposed to chasing other priorities. These are the organizational pillars, as Chris Valaika said, that they've been trying to establish. And so Valaika is a big part of that, creating literal curriculum, creating kind of plans for coaches and coordinators who then relay that on to specific players. And then, of course, Valaika leads that process in the big leagues. This year, even, Valaika completely changed the physical scouting reports that they give the Reds players for every game, showing they're prioritizing different things. And Valaika, talking about his philosophy, what he believes in, and what he's teaching, said this. He said, and he does have a very analytical background, especially on the curriculum side. He's been very forward over the course of his career of having lesson plans that use data and use new technology very well. But here are the things he stresses. He says, I believe in the traditional. There's always a place for situational hitting. There's always a place for bunting. And here's the biggest part, he said, if you play the game to the scoreboard, the game takes care of itself. Francona's been a champion of the message I try to bring with the situational hitting, understanding what the game asks you, the heartbeat of the game, being more game-oriented, changing your approach based on, again, what the game's specific situation is. So you don't have guys get called up and they're in the big leagues, and now you have a coach telling them to beat the shift for the first time, or to hit a fly out to drive the runner in, because that had happened. Reds hitters weren't being taught that consistently enough. That's where you saw the lack of alignment show up. And so situationally, you're seeing that, or organizationally, you're seeing that situational stuff stressed from top to bottom. Now it'll take 5 years to see if this works or not. But the stuff you're hearing at the big league level, that's what the conversations have been like across the organization.
What did you make of Terry Francona post-game on Saturday in a game that featured 13 runs for the Reds, 11 hits for the Reds. I think 6 extra base hits in that game. And he said he thought the play of the game was a 4th inning bunt single by Matt McLain.
That's consistent messaging that there hasn't always been. And so that was McLain, and McLain just has the tools. He knows how to bunt. We've seen a lot over the years, Reds hitters being asked to bunt for the first time in the big leagues. McLain's always been able to do it, and because he's a baseball rat, who, like, Matt McLain can bunt. Look at the guy, you know that he can bunt. You need, like, they're having Will Benson bunt now. They've had, like, I remember last year they had Jonathan India bunting. Spencer Steer tried to lay down a bunt the other day. Like, it takes an organizational vision to know what you're doing and to establish. Elly Cruz never bunted, and then all of a sudden he's in the big leagues trying to bunt for hits, and it didn't work. So, and here's something that a lot of guys stress to me with this as well. Like, why aren't the Reds a good enough situational hitting team yet? And now, no one's making excuses. The Reds have to be better. They have to hit better. But they are saying some of the stuff they're stressing is such a drastic shift from a situational hitting standpoint that it's stuff a lot of guys have never done before. So they're trying to make sure, to your original question about Francona, they identify and reward successful versions of this as they try to establish the way, beginning in the major league level, that they want to trickle through the minors. Especially they want to recognize it because it's such new messaging compared to what these guys have heard previously, with all the turnover and the more all in on analytics skewed backgrounds that previous Reds hitting coaches have had. And again, that's fine, but the Reds are trying and working to shift, and the shared backgrounds of Francona, Valleca, Farrell, looking through the organization, they do think they've got the right guys. Now they've got to hit better. The changes have to work. But kind of looping back to my original point, they are trying something different for a team that hasn't done a good enough job hitting over the last 10 plus years.
If you don't try something different, if something's not working and you don't try something different, you don't hang around very long. And people know in these jobs, players, front office people, whatever, it's a risk to try something different. A lot of times the easy way is to stick to the same process or the same way of doing business. What do they say? The bold get rewarded. You should try things, and that's good. I'm glad to see it. That's fascinating.
I want to say this too real quick. I think this really does start with Nick Krall, who, what we don't talk enough about with Nick is his promotion to the lead baseball executive role heading into the 2021 season. And now that was a built to hit for power type team. But then the rebuild that started in 22, I think that was when you saw organizationally, from a player acquisition standpoint, the Reds to stress some of this stuff more. And then Nick, as he has put his stamp on key roles, hitting director, minor league hitting coordinators, stuff like that. They have an academies hitting coordinator now who works with the kids in the Dominican Republic, which they didn't have before. Like, this is the stuff that Nick has been, this is what his kind of focus has been from a development side of making all this. So, like, just an interesting situation, it goes throughout the organization, from Nick Krall to the messaging that the 16-year-olds in the Dominican Republic are receiving. That's the idea they're trying to establish. Again, will it work? We'll see, but I have a long story up on this if you find this interesting.
Where do we find said story?
Charlie's Chalkboard.
There you go. That's what I just wanted to make sure you said it. Also, let's take a minute real quick. We see it, we hear it. Around the ballpark this weekend, there were season ticket members at Great American Ballpark. I felt and I heard some great feedback on Power Stacks, Chaz. I know you have too. And we want to give all of those people and anyone else out there the opportunity to hop on and partner with us, join the ride. And if you have a business that would like to be associated with, or let's use your word, Chaz, alignment. If you'd like to align or at the Power Stacks crowd, see, we can make that happen. Something big, something small, something that speaks to you. There are all kinds of entry points to be a part of this. And if your business would like to be a part, just drop us a note at powerstackspod@gmail.com. Powerstackspod@gmail.com. All kinds of fun things we could do Plus, you have the advantage of being a part of the Growler Podcast Network, which is the bigger picture. It's the whole thing. Those guys are
It really is the
rolling
thing.
you and everybody else.
That's the point, right? Like, this is all organizations. Like, these are just organizations with systems and connections. We have it, and we've established it. And the Reds are trying to be more like the Growler.
Listen, the season ticket members that were at the ballpark on Sunday, they listen, and we're going to have more on them later in the show, someone specifically, but the feedback is good. We're open to suggestions. We're having a good time, and it's just going to keep rolling. It's picking up steam. So join us if you will. Check out that email address, powerstackspod@gmail.com. That could also be for feedback, ideas, anything you got, but we'd love to partner with you or your business and make something happen and make this community get a little bit bigger and a little bit better. Time now, let's talk a little bit about Tito. And this was just an observation. I didn't even have this in the rundown initially, but I mentioned the season ticket member recognition on Sunday at Great American Ballpark. And if you haven't seen that or been a part of that, it's a great, great perk for season ticket members. I'll try and set the stage and paint the picture. Once a season, they put up essentially what are, fences or bike racks kind of along the warning track, all along the field, from dugout to dugout across the outfield. They let in season ticket members. They stand there, and Reds staff and players do a lap around the field. It's not for autographs.
Pre-game show hosts.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the, if you're slumming it with the pregame show host, then you haven't gotten to the good stuff yet. But you make a lap, and fans have a chance to just say, hey, Brent Suter, I love what you do. Thanks for doing this. Can I take a quick picture? And he leans in, and they do that. Players across the board. On Sunday, I should preface this by saying that kind of interaction, it's not for everybody. Different people feel differently about interacting with fans that way. You get the same thing at Reds Fest. It's a little bit overwhelming to be a star player in a town where everybody loves you. But for the most part, it's really intimate, I guess would be a word to use it. Kids and people get to get close to these guys that they see on TV that they love and love watching. And on Sunday, there was a moment, as you know, that everyone there is waiting for Elly De La Cruz. And when I'm making the rounds, I ask a lot of kids, hey, who's your favorite player? Who you want to see? Elly De La Cruz is easily, far and away, your number one answer. But when Elly is coming up the steps out of the Reds dugout, I happened to be there. Terry Francona was in the same general area. And I just noticed, I don't know what the plan was. I think the plan was for Elly to obviously have some people with him to help him kind of handle the crowd and the demand and all of those things. But Terry Francona went right to him, and essentially it felt very human. It felt very human that Francona kind of recognized what Elly was about to face, which is all wonderful. There's not any part of being a star baseball player and the adoration of fans that I'm saying is not good. But this is a kid, as we said before, that can't go have a cup of coffee, can't do whatever, and has had a very difficult emotional week with his family. That was top of mind for me. And Francona essentially said, hey, man, people know I can't walk that far, don't want to walk that far. Come get in with me. I'm getting in this Gator. And it was like a family moment, like a father to one of his sons saying, I got you here. We're going to do this together. I'm not going to send you out there alone. We're going to do this together on what I think would probably be a difficult day for De La Cruz. And it struck me and just was one of those moments that you step outside of putting somebody's name in the lineup card and watching him perform and paying him a lot of money. I appreciated that about Francona because there was a smile on the face of De La Cruz when he was riding in that Gator with his manager. And there are going to be other times where De La Cruz is going to be more available to fans and more available for the autograph or the picture or the fist bump. But Sunday was a good day to let the Hall of Fame manager drive him around the ballpark and make some kids smile and wave and say hello to some folks, but also kind of protect this 23-year-old kid who needs his family right now. That was just an observation.
I bet there's going to be a time where Terry needs something from Elly. Maybe it's even a situation where he needs something from Elly and he doesn't even ask. Like he doesn't even, like Elly just says, oh, Tito needs some help here. And Elly, I mean, this is like, I do think of it as like a bank you invest into in terms of how these relationships work. And it pays off. And I truly believe that investing in relationships, with the people you work with the people you're in the trenches with, pays off tangibly, and grows over time. And that felt like one of those moments, genuinely.
Yes, it did. Looking ahead now, the Reds hit the road. Cleveland is up first on the road trip. That means two things. That means Terry Francona goes back to his old stomping grounds. And it means on Monday, Wade Miley returns to the scene of his 2021 no-hitter against Cleveland. There was the temporary Hulk tattoo that is now a permanent Hulk tattoo. Lots of sides to this story. But the biggest one is this is not the same Wade Miley that threw a no-hitter in 2021. This is 38-year-old Wade Miley, just coming off Tommy John, has a few innings in his hip pocket in his return. This is going to be different, but this is where the Reds are. As we said last week, they feel more comfortable with Miley and his track record and his know-how than some other options they may have had. So are you looking forward to Monday?
I am really I'm like genuinely looking forward to watching Wade Miley pitch. First of all, like Wade's 2021 season is one of the favorite seasons that I've ever covered. Like he was legitimately very good. And then there was just this personality to every great moment that he had. And then second, there's the side of it, which is like, I like to check in with these guys at the start of the season. And this is Wade's start of the season. I said, hey, what do you throw these days? What pitches do you throw? And he basically says, I don't know. I guess we'll see tomorrow. I mean, technically, he has a four seam, a cutter, and a changeup. But the changeup hasn't been working well. He's dabbled with a curveball now and then. He threw a knuckleball once. I'm telling you, Wade doesn't know what he's going to throw tomorrow. And that's
making stuff up on the fly.
Fascinating. It's literally going to, and I mean this with full respect. I have so much respect for Wade's career. It's literally going to be the equivalent of the 38-year-old guy at the YMCA playing pickup basketball, who's going at his own pace and is going to try to beat you whatever way he can with kind of that old man game. And if anyone could do it, it's Wade. Will he do it? Who knows? The first game he pitched was not encouraging at all. But I'm genuinely looking forward to see what Wade Miley has up his sleeve, because that's the kind of game, that's the kind of season. We'll see how long this lasts. That's the kind of season it's going to be for Wade.
I would second that. It's also interesting. When's the last time you saw the probables for a series for the Reds and saw 3 consecutive left-handed starters? That's what they got in this series. Miley, Abbott, and Lodolo. They'll throw at the Guardians this week. So it's going to be interesting. Yes, there are going to be some of the story will be Tito going back to the land. That's going to be out there, but the Reds are at 500 right now. They need to get above 500 and get on some sort of a roll to make this interesting again. So it starts in Cleveland on Monday. We said we had this thing about ice cream in the tease. I want to take a minute to recognize you like ice cream, right?
Hot take, yeah.
Yeah, and in Graeters specifically, right?
Oh, who doesn't?
You're a Cincinnati kid, raised on Graeters, I'm sure. Go ahead.
In college, someone said, hey, Charlie, let's check out this new ice cream spot. Takes me to this Graeters in Skokie. And I'm like, you're not telling me about Graeters. It was hyped up as this great spot. And of course it was. But I show up and I'm like, what's a Graeters doing in Skokie? That's a true story.
That's because people can't go without their Graeters. And as we talk about the growth of the Power Stacks community, we want you to know that we see you and we hear you and we love this. And so if Charlie's waving right now for the YouTube audience. When we see something that we think is Graeters worthy, #Graeters worthy, we're going to reward that. And so first up for us had to be Marissa. Marissa on social media shows us she's at the Red Legs run, and she says, I'm getting through this run, listening to my new favorite podcast, Power Stacks. And then I see Marissa again at the season ticket function on Sunday at Great American Ballpark. Marissa is hands down Graeters Worthy, and she will be receiving a 6-pint pack from Graeters very soon. We're sending it on behalf of Power Stacks and the Growler Podcast Network. Huge thanks to Graeters. Huge thanks to the support that we have for Paul and the Growler Network. And shout out to Marissa and Chris for their support of Power Stacks. Enjoy the Graeters on us.
Real quick, there are two things Graeters doesn't get enough credit for. First is their Buckeyes. I'm a big fan of Buckeyes. There's a space. I'm not trying to criticize Graeters. There is a space in Atlanta that I think does have the best Buckeyes I've ever had.
Oh.
But Graeters, I mean, that's my home Buckeyes. Graeters Buckeyes, unbelievable. Next, people don't talk enough about Graeters hot fudge. Graeters hot fudge, very, very underrated. Last thing too, and this is I was going to say 2, but now I'll say 3. Constantly have Graeters in the freezer. Have it all the time. Sometimes you don't want the full ice cream, but you know what you do want? Half a cup of chocolate sprinkles. So you take the Graeters chocolate sprinkles, you pour them in a cup. You got half a cup of chocolate sprinkles. I've done that on more than few occasions. And Graeters does have the best chocolate sprinkles in the land.
I just want to note for the record that we started this show with a smile on Chaz's face, and we end this show with that same smile. In between, he bookends all the deep dive into the notebook.
I know, right?
Great reporting with a smile and a smile. So check out the YouTube show if you want to see that. Pass along the podcast to anyone you know. Share it, subscribe, like. Maybe you'll be Graeters worthy. We'd like to share more of that. But our thanks to producer Kent, everyone at the Growler Podcast Network, and our thanks to you for listening to Power Stacks. It's been fun. Going to be a good week. We'll see you next time.